And really what I want to talk to you today a lot about really is elephant in the room. It's where we have some difference and we're really not quite sure on how to deal with it. And we all experience this, whether we're sort of down at local school with the kids, whether we're out at a social function and there's someone who's a bit different, we're not quite sure. And so what I wanted today to talk about, and we've touched on it a little bit already with some of the presentations, but really look at that difference and why it's there, but most importantly, how we as practitioners actually start to deal with this and integrate it into our mainstream business practice so we get better outcomes and more quantifiable better outcomes. So if we go to the next slide, so what I want to get from you, so I'm going to get this vision, I've got the promise today. So what I'm hoping for you to come out of today with is a bit of a strategic approach around how we can deal with some of these challenging issues around diversity. Confidence to overcome, perhaps as individuals, and I think you're all pretty confident, but perhaps just give you a bit of a handle on how you as individuals can also perhaps work with when you're in challenging environments. Okay, so just to perhaps start off, I want to set some ideas around dimension. Again, this has already perhaps been a little bit covered previously, but we sort of start to think about dimensions. You know, we have 20% of the population who identify they have a disability, 4.8 million people. Right? It's not insignificant. We then go down to people from a migrant, we come from culturally linguistically diverse, 28%, 6.8. These are not trivial numbers. They are high numbers. But like everything, it's never quite as black and white as you might think. Okay? So we've also got to sort of think about how we might do that. Okay, so base human condition. Is it up there? Fear. It is fear, right? And I know I generalise, but it's, and look, I experience this all the time. You know, people aren't quite sure what to say, and they go, they're too scared to say, did you see that? Did you watch this? And, I must admit, I do think they're a bit near when they go, over there. But that's okay, that's all right, we'll get around it. But it is fear. And the fear prevents us from moving forward because we're not confident. And I think if we accept that, and it's not, again, not so black and white. So personally, so when I was 19 when I was diagnosed, I was at uni, and I've got to tell you, when I was diagnosed as a young bloke, my first thought was, my doctor said you could get a car, you could get a licence, but if you hit somebody or something, then you have to live with that for the rest of life. And I was thinking, God, how the hell would I pick up chicks? Is this worth it? But it is those stupid things that go through your mind. And look, and for someone like myself, and I'll go through some a little bit more numbers later, it is that whole thing about how do you internalise and how do you accept it. I now, for 2 years while I was diagnosed, after I was diagnosed, I did not want anyone to know, I did not want to be treated differently. That was my fear, being treated differently. Okay? And that is a fear for someone who, and that's grief. If you really want to think about it in really simple terms, that's grief. We don't want to be treated differently. We all have to internalise and go through it and work it out ourselves. And people out in the community are all experiencing their own things, whether it could be a range of things. They've been ill that week, they've lost a loved one, who knows. We've all got our own crosses to bear. But it's understanding that fear and accepting that, and then embracing that and realising that, you know what, if someone reacts negatively towards you, it's actually not about you, it's about them. Sorry to say, it's actually not about them and not about us. So, next one. So, what I've got is that there's a bit of a, now I don't know if this video is going to work. Do you think it might work? So, this is just a really short, it's a short couple of minutes video, and I've got to tell you, the stuff that you'll see on this happens to me on a regular basis.
Morning there. And come on. Morning, Alice.
It happens. I swear to God, it happens.
Like so many of us, he just doesn't know how to interact with people with disabilities.
It's pretty easy, really. People with disabilities are people first.
We need the same things that every person needs, like respect.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay. Maybe we need to be more specific.
The easiest easiest way to show respect is to focus on the person, not the disability. It's okay. You'll get the hang of it.
One easy way to focus on the person is to watch the person signing and not their interpreter.
Or their companion.
It's really cool that you'd like to help, but do us both a favor and please ask me first. What you think might be helping, I got you. Wait, might actually not. If you'd like to offer me help, let me hold on to your elbow. Don't take mine.
Hey, you like to take my arm?
Sure.
Assistive devices help us to live our lives. They're really important and really personal.
Grabbing them only makes it weird for everyone.
Please only touch our devices and service animals if we've given you permission. And don't take it personally if I ask you not to. Remember that my service animal helps me all the time. Neither of us would like it if we were separated.
Remember, we make our own decisions. We sign documents, vote, volunteer, work, and pay taxes.
We get married.
Who would have thought?
Just because I'm a smile.
Just because I'm blind
Hey, help you!
does not mean I'm deaf.
Just because I'm deaf
And just because I use a wheelchair doesn't mean that I can't sweep you off your feet.
So take a deep breath, relax, we don't fight.
Now let's work really ugly.
How are you?
And if you're not sure what to do, just ask.
Hi, would you still like to see a menu?
No thanks, but can you please read it to me?
Sure, definitely.
Just treat us the way you would want to be treated, and we'll all be okay.
Morning. Good morning. Morning, Alice.
Right.
Nice job, Bob. Go for it. And be human. There's no need to be awkward.
Right, and I'll tell you a story that happened to me 2 weeks ago. I was at Melbourne Central Station, and the trains were screwed up, and I just said, "Oh, can you show me the escalator? There's a different escalator." And some guy, the guy in the turnstile got another guy to help me. And he's going down. He got on his little walkie-talkie. He said, "Oh, where does he want to go?" And the guy said, "Just ask him." what I didn't hear was dickhead. But it isn't. But it happens all the time, and from personal experience, And what you're seeing is they're just not sure what to do. And we as practitioners have to overcome that. And there are some real challenges. These things happen for a reason, and it's really important that we sort of get a sense. And what we heard today was some life experiences and where people come from. But I think it's important that we perhaps get an understanding of the dimension as practitioners, so that we can actually modify and adapt our plans. Because as we know, when we go to do engagement and comms plans, we've got to know who's our target audience. It's not always the general community. There are going to be key people, all sorts of things. So we need to understand how that might work. So I want to just give you a bit of a look at just a breakdown. So if we look at the first one, okay, so this is just a country of birth, okay, and it's actually 3.9, so I was actually quite staggered by this, so about 3.9 million, this is 2015 numbers. 3.9 million come from, are not born in Australia. Right, but it's interesting, again, not always, it's more black and white, You've got a lot of English speaking, Western countries there at the top two, and then obviously we talk to Chinese, we go down from there. And there are various cultural differences. And I'll talk a little bit about the multicultural community and the difference between the multicultural, perhaps the disability community as well. There are quite distinct differences. The next slide we'll just give you a bit of a breakdown on disability by type. Now, I'm sorry, I didn't have a chance to simplify this a little bit more, but just to draw your attention, there are some really simple things to, I think. So one of the challenges that we have, I think, in our community, we have this innate desire to put people into categories. And we put them into categories based on what Centrelink reckons we should put them in. And then that just becomes the world as we know it. So, you know, we have, in really broad terms, we have, in terms of things such as, mental illness, behavioural challenges, I think it's about 800,000 people, and then I think the rest sort of fall into the disability sector. But of course, disability, you've got to be categorised. But I can tell you right now, so somebody who has, exact same age, exact same eye condition, could have a completely different set of needs based on their upbringing, their socioeconomic education, where they live. Whereas somebody with multiple sclerosis could have my exact same set of needs. Right? So badging them on a medical framework is just crazy stuff. So we've got to break ourselves out of that as communicators and start to think, what are people's needs? Not what we think they necessarily are, but what are the ranges of needs that are out there. So the interesting point you think about, 34% we've got in there as muscular, so that's obviously physical type disabilities, and they sort of go down from there. The other really interesting one is by age. Okay, so breaking by age, you can just look at that. You know, so 69% over 55. Now, if you're an older person and I think we've all parents and family members, and you'll be able to relate to this, you know, they don't have a disability, their eyesight's just getting a bit worse. Oh, their hearing's going to drop again. They don't think of themselves as having a disability. Right? So they won't identify with the terminology at all. Right? They're just living their lives as people. Right? So, you know, again, some of the complexities about how we look at things are perhaps starting to come out. I'm hopefully going to try and simplify this as we go through, but I think it's important to get this sort of understanding. So what I would like you to quickly do is just a quick activity, just on your tables. And I assume, do you have anyone on the single table? No? If you need to, I've got no idea, so feel free to move. And what I was going to say as well, if you want to ask a question, yell it out, please. Don't wave your hand, you'll just look stupid. Right? So, unless you want to draw attention from your colleagues and pointing at Tony and stuff. Anyway, but yeah, look, I'd just like you to just have a bit of a chat, just amongst yourself, just for, 3 or 4 minutes. Why do you think it's tough for us? Why is disability left off the spectrum when we do stuff? Why is disability missed often falls off the process?
We mentioned because of big jobs, small numbers. So, in terms of percentage of community, you need to get some consultation done, and it's a fact of life, it's quickly. So you're dealing with the larger numbers of folk, and unless of course the thing you're consulting on is around disability services, different story.
Correct.
But if it's just a broader piece of communications or consultation that you're doing, it's because of small numbers.
Right. Yep. And what else?
We talked about the diversity within the disability community, and that perhaps a fear about how do you accommodate that diversity in one engagement process. How do you make it accessible for all different types of disability?
And I'll get some more feedback. That is so true, and to the point where, from the political perspective, things often. Putting aside the NDIS, the disability sector fights amongst itself really bad. It is terrible. And I remember I was doing some work with the Commonwealth Office of Disability, doing some consulting, and the secretary, a guy called Roger Barson at the time, and he said, God help us if the disability community ever unite. Because it'll make my life a nightmare. But it is true. So therefore, politicians become nervous about wanting to make decisions, because even within the blindness sector, each of these groups fight amongst each other. They can't please everyone. So I don't want to be seen to be doing something wrong for the people with disability. I just want to do anything. It happens all the time. Just an interesting observation, a professional observation on the way I do. So thank you for that. That's a really good insight. Really good insight. Anyone else?
the perceptions that if you consult with people with disabilities, that the project's going to cost much more to be, accessible. So don't consult with them because, we can't afford it.
Goodness me, you wouldn't want to make anything better, would you?
But definitely I get that.
Yeah.
That it'll up the project cost if we don't have, cost to make it an inclusive, accessible space that don't.
And it's interesting how that thinks because, and that's actually underpins a broader issue that I know within this infrastructure space. You go to the planners and you say, okay, what are the negotiables? And they go, nothing. Automatic response, nothing. Until the minister's office says something, and then all of a sudden you find everything's on the table. It's extraordinary. Any other feedback? Any thoughts? Someone's listening to the voicemail.
Tony, I had an experience once where we had a person with hearing disability coming to a training session, and we wanted to do the right thing, so we went to the state body and asked them for information how we could best support this person, but we also went to the national body and got conflicting advice.
Yes.
Which made us gun shy because
absolutely
we didn't just want to do the right thing on the one day, we were thinking actually here's some value add we can put into our program and support more people with hearing challenges. However, we didn't actually know what the solution was because I don't have a hearing challenge, so I don't experience that, so I don't know it for myself. I talk to other people, but then try and maintain to a standard or to an understanding, and it's challenging at times to find that out.
Yeah, a couple of key lessons in my life, particularly being a little bit involved in the political game. It's about 50 plus 1. You're never going to please everyone, right? And accept that. And to give you an example, just using you mentioned hearing in the blind sector, you will have people that will say you must give me braille. Now I've got to tell you, Lord of the Rings, okay, just one volume, you know how big that is, the ring. A braille page is 11 inches by 11 inches. By about 1.5 inches thick as one volume, that equals 3 volumes. One book, right? It takes a lot of time, and so you've actually got to make some balances out about what you do. And a lot of the strategies that when you go to do things, it's not necessarily about doing it; it's about having the ability to do it if required. So setting that stuff up around the back. So it's not necessarily making sure that you have a 15-page document because you've got the first page of English and then you've got 14 pages of other languages. Not about that. It's actually about how do we actually make sure that we're not excluding people from doing this. And these audiences also have perhaps a little bit more of a challenge. And again, not homogenous. It comes back to what I was saying about needs. If we talk about individual, my needs versus someone else. So if we want to sort of perhaps understand, you see, and again, let's not miss the key fundamental that people are people. And they are a member of the community, of our community, right? Of our community. I was on the board of Blind Citizens Australia while I was working for Vision Australia. And this is going back 15 years ago. I got off the board because I was just getting blinded out. I had to live with normal, I won't say normal people. I had to expand my horizons to go. It'd be a bit like being on working for the Australian Cricket Board, playing cricket every weekend. And it would just swallow your life. And it was a little bit the same. And I've got to go, I'm involved in scouting, I'm involved on school council, I'm involved in politics, I'm on a board, I do all sorts of different things. So I'm just a member of the community. I'm up around wine, mates, we enjoy wine. Right? And that's the way everyone else will perceive themselves. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but one of the additional challenges of why these communities are perhaps also difficult to get is that they're marginalised, right? And we use that term, and there are reasons why that's happened. So the disability, the unemployment rate for disability and for migrants is 50% higher than the standard work rate, right? 45% of people with a disability, I couldn't find the exact stats for migrants, but 45% of people with disability live at or below the poverty line. Right, so let's just think about that. Let's put that into context. Okay, so you think, geez, they're below the poverty line. What does that mean? That probably means that they haven't had the educational opportunities that others have got. That'll mean they don't have the income earning potential. So therefore, have they got the latest iPhone? Are they accessing the latest, social media technology? Are they the attitude I have is not necessarily one that is replicated right across the board, where, you know, I really honestly do see my blindness as a great strength. You know, you walk on the trains, you put your cane around the corner, someone's there, oh, sorry, oh, would you like a seat? Sure. Thanks. See, I can get people to buy me drinks at pubs to see. Alright, so there is some real things, so we have to understand our social demographic. And particularly when we go out in campaigns where we talk about trying to reach the public and the community. It's not like you can go to the disability group, the group that speaks Egyptian, and all that sort of stuff, because they're in the community. That's where they live. Okay, so how do we break all this up to target? Okay, so there are some practical things that you can do when it comes to migrant communities. And you know, the interesting things is, and I'll give you a couple of examples, but unlike the disability community, and I'll talk about the disability community first, and I've just touched on it and how they sort of tend to be integrated. You won't find a group of, you know, people with disability gathering and talking over at the pub. Just, you know, it doesn't happen. Okay? There will be support groups and self-help groups, but you won't have them interacting as communities, as opposed to the migrant community, who get together because they share, in many cases, they have a shared culture. So they understand where they're coming from. It is comforting for them to, just in the same way when we go to, you know, Bali or we go overseas and we find an Aussie, yeah, we'll sit down and have a great chat. Pretty comfortable. We can talk on the same terms. We don't know what they're doing. Same thing. It's no different. People will gather. So, with the targeting the disability sector can become challenging. And I've got some strategies I'll talk about shortly in terms of how you might actually integrate that into business practice. But if you want to sort of try and go out and say, geez, how do I get my stuff out to people, you know, with a disability, it is going to be hard, right? So that's where it comes down to that strategy of making sure you've got the facility to provide the information as required. And the social media platforms and everything are becoming so much better in terms of their accessibility for people with disabilities that it's actually becoming quite a reasonable way to use them. Okay. Now, the added challenge you've got with disability particularly is hidden disabilities. Right? Now, one of the great things about this, other than it being 62 inches, not that I'm boasting, is that someone looks at this and they will know exactly what my issue is. In most cases. Other than the bloke when I was up at the cemetery said, what's that? Oh, good old Stan. Anyway, lovely bloke. Okay, so I actually started using this to outline. So I started using the cane when I was about 22, 23, and I was doing it because I'd walk into a deli and I'd go, excuse me, what sort of stuff you got for lunch? It's on the board in front of you. Right? I go to the bus and say, where's the bus going? He says, it's on the front. And I go, yeah, dickhead, I mean, I wouldn't ask you for it. No. So people see this and they automatically know, and they'll offer to give you a hand. Okay. Now, if you're deaf and you talk to someone and they don't respond, you go, God, they're rude. You know, or if somebody says no, they're not going to do something, or they can't do something, and you know, people don't want to be. I get back to what I was originally saying at the very start about, you know, not wanting to be treated differently. So people don't like to identify. So it actually can be difficult because they are hidden, because you don't actually always know what's going on. So again, it adds this level of complexity. But if you're providing choice in the way you do things and options in the way you do things, then you provide, as opposed to a single channel, a single way to access something, then you really are opening your way and to give the community, our community, a much better way to evolve themselves in any engagement activity. Okay, so how do we improve? So there are multiple levels of engagement which I'll go through. And I think as a business, we have strategic, community on the ground. You know, things like workshops, focus groups, pop-ups, even. You know, getting out there. I think that's another challenge which we all face is how do we engage the unengaged. That's a thing we all face. And online, which is obviously becoming particularly amongst younger people, but more and more so in our busy time, we like to do it on the couch. So, perhaps as the next activity, just have a bit of a chat. On your tables, discuss. Whatever that says.
Discuss and land on a good strategy that works to improve engagement and communications for a hard-to-get audience.
Yeah, just anything. Just have a quick 5-minute chat. Like here's some examples. I want to talk to you about some of those things I'm talking about, how you set things up into your process to make things more accessible. So, who's got some examples I'd like to share with us?
It's what you were just saying about...
Liam! Your voice is so...
Tony always knows my voice.
I stalk him.
No, we were just saying that it's important to go to where people are, so especially with hard to reach audiences, that don't expect them to come to you, that we need to make that extra effort to go to them. That can obviously vary depending on who the audience is, but we need to go the extra mile for them.
I couldn't agree more, and I actually think what you're talking about is actually the next stage, or certainly probably within the government space, or my experience the government space is actually going into that whole what I call pop-ups. You know, so you try to get into a school engagement on health. You know what? You will get somebody who comes in that's passionate, probably works in the sector or has worked in the sector, got a particular bugbear, and that's fine. You need to talk to those people. But it's the people who are walking down the street just busy with life will never go to those things. You can capture for 3 to 5 minutes at a stall in front of the shopping centre. And you can give them some information. You might even have like a quick 3-question survey of an iPad. They go bang, bang, bang. Oh, look, here's a postcard. If you did want to go do some more stuff, there's a more detailed one online. It'd be great to get your thoughts. Right? That's it. Great. Thank you, Lee. Any others?
Well, that's my work is about engaging with the hard to reach and the hard to hear.
Yep.
And it's right on the networks of those different groups, and then working closely with them to make the engagement more widespread.
Yep. Yeah. And that's great, because we want to talk a bit more about how you might formalise some of those things into everyday business practice. That's really good. Anything else?
I think making sure that really technical environmental documents online are web accessible.
Oh yeah. I'm not going to argue that. But yeah, and it's interesting how you say, because it's not just for, if it's accessible, it's good design. People forget that. They think, and going back to your point at the back, you were saying about, it adds cost to things. Well, actually, it just makes it better for everyone. It's just, accessibility equals good design. So what I want to do now, so I'm just going to, just to finish things off. Okay, so when we talk about strategic engagement, okay, so within, what we can do on a strategic level is we can actually work with peak bodies. Now, I think there's a bit of a trick to doing this, and I think as a sector, I think that there's actually a sector-wide opportunity for us to think about. And that is, we have lots of peak bodies, and you know what, they zero funding, or sorry, bugger all funding, they get very, very little. But they are a wealth of knowledge, right? They represent their users. And where I think, however, if we as all individual businesses went to talk to them on every single thing that we had to talk to them about, they would do nothing else. And generally speaking, we'd ask them to do it for nothing. Right? And they're there to help their members. So I think that there's actually an opportunity to perhaps look at developing, and from, if you're a bigger organisation, perhaps like in local councils, MAV, like government, state government, is to actually get together a reference group to help you advise for an infrastructure reference group, for example, is one case, and talk to them. It doesn't have to be about projects. It's not necessarily about projects, but what are the policies that are underpinning our projects? Where can we improve on them at a policy level? Right, so that then filters down into the built environment and the process. So I think those sort of groups are really, really important to acknowledge. Where we have sort of things like steering groups, steering reference groups, is great. Who can we get to be involved in this? Actually look at them from a diverse lens. And that's about that. Could be migrant groups, that could be people with disability, and again, looking at it from a local community perspective, where are the issues? Where are we likely to? And you might make a clear decision not to actually do that, but at least you're making that a considered decision, as opposed to just forgetting. Okay. And integrate into our standard business. And so with all of that stuff, we then integrate that into it. We have things that are integrated into our standard business process, right? And that can be things like communication strategies. How do we actually make sure we're providing information in the right format? How do we make sure that, like we're saying, accessible document design, using, and it's pretty simple stuff, it's using style guide, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, putting descriptions behind pictures. You can't see them visibly, but I can hear them when I use my screen reader. So there is those sorts of standard business practices which you can implement, and if they just happen as a part of your daily business, you are improving your engagement considerably. Right? At the next level, okay, so we talk about community engagement and forums. Again, how do we actually get people there? And that's where, so for example, local count, I think nearly all of them, all local councils will have a disability reference group and various other service reference groups, okay, depending on where they are and the needs of that local community. They are a great source to tap into. So you might actually conduct, as a part of your process, your engagement process, a workshop with that group. You can make some time, buy them some food, make them feel good, all that sort of stuff. And I think it's good, and you might even think about, well, look, their skills and knowledge are valuable. We value them. We should pay them a sitting fee. Right? I reckon absolutely fair enough. You know what? Anyone who's in the building game will know how much we pay consultants to do stuff, and that hourly rate. I think it's only fair and reasonable that we actually acknowledge the value that people with diverse experiences can bring to the table. So that's a good one to think about with those forums, how you might sort of engage that. And then we sort of go down to perhaps personal interactions. Whereas as individuals and where you can go back to your teams and actually encourage them on how to do things. Okay, so online material, right? Online collateral. Just make sure it's designed properly. Now that doesn't mean that you don't put, for example, people go, oh yes, but it's a colour document, I've got to do that. I go, yeah, no, put that up, that's fine. But you've also got that, you might have that in a slightly different, you might have that just as a text file or a rich text or a Word document. You can put up multiple formats, it's pretty easy, it's just save as, you just change the file as you save it. And if you've got that as a part of your process, again, it becomes pretty simple. Making sure you adhere to things like Web Accessibility Guide, W3C, AA standards. I wouldn't do AAA, it's too onerous. But the online stuff is becoming more and more a way to go in terms of accessibility, including things like Facebook. Structure, I've just talked about documents. And printed material, when we design things, 9 point font's not good for anyone. I'm sorry, it's not. Right, so give some thought about that. And do you actually need the words? And one thing I keep on banging on about, and my colleagues hate me for it, but I keep on asking them to, they write it in because everyone's subsumed within the workplace, understandably, you talk all the work terms, you understand the project terminology and language. Out there in the real world, they haven't got a clue. They don't give a stuff, it's the Department of Health and Human Services, it's the government. Right? They just, when I was at the School Building Authority, oh, we're building a school and you talk about the school and the roof, well, where's the human bit to it? It's buildings don't laugh and cry, they don't bleed, they don't have any emotions. It's the people inside them. It's like that resilient stuff, you take the people out and you've just got a bunch of useless buildings and roads. It means nothing. So it's always got to come back to that human side. Right? Really, really important. And video, my favourite. Who here, I can get you to put your hands, so I won't go into that. Who here has been guilty of doing a video which has just got a music track and then writing on it? I feel like I'm in an elevator when I go. So I encourage you to just have a narration. Right? It's actually, it's a very small cost, but and on the basis of understanding that you've got this expression, right? So I get that. But when you've got the time and you're planned, get the audio on there as well, because it will just open it up to so many more people. Because you've got to remember, there are a lot of people out there that will just miss things that pop up on the screen or their technology, but they can, and the words just reinforce. It actually adds an immense amount of value to what you do and how you do it. So and then obviously there's all the captioning as well. Okay, which is now certainly from a government perspective is a part of standard business practice. So I have one going. I hit my colleague with my stick all the time. I just tell him to stop running into my cane. It's crazy. Okay, and multiple languages, right? This is the one that freaks out my minister's office the most. Oh yeah, but the Greens were putting something out, and I'm going, yeah, they're putting out available in call this number. It's not the whole stuff. So, again, what can you do about that? So, again, we're running the Public Housing Renewal Program as a real example. We've got to put out an update. So you've got to remember we're doing for an immediate strategy, we've got two strategies here. The immediate one is we're putting stuff out, we're putting it in with letterbox, and on the back of it, it'll have just, translated version available and the link, and then phone, the translation information service, okay? And then, so we can do that. Moving forward as a part of the public renewal program is we've got to relocate people while we rebuild, and then they'll be coming back. So when we talk to them, we're actually capturing their exact information needs. I'm going to have that in the database. We'll be able to target information. So we're actually in the business of actually understanding our consumers and our users. What better way than actually asking them how do we communicate with them? Pretty simple thing when you say it like that, you go, yeah, why don't we? Right? It's a good way to do it. We do it now at the moment. We'll say email. Do you want email or newsletter or whatever you want? And we sort of do that in simple forms. I reckon expand that. It's a very, very simple thing to do. And it value adds, and it clearly demonstrates, if you've got a parliamentary committee, review committee for doing stuff, that you are actually in tune with this stuff, So, I think there's some really good ways you can do that. Is understand what your consumers want. Okay, activity at the moment. We'll skip past that because I think we're running on time. Okay, so just the things I want to leave you with. So to improve your engagement, integrate into your mainstream business practice. Take this on as a project. Look, understand that our community is diverse. It's not we have diverse communities, our community is diverse. Subtle, but important, right? So try and integrate that into your business practice. Okay? As a part of that process, increase your organisational capability and understanding by explaining how this stuff works. Again, not hard. Your web team will often have all this information about how to design documents. Again, it's a 1 hour session, which we can all afford to take. And something should be available for every person in your organisation. And then there's the ongoing reinforcement, and often that starts at the top. So actually having your leadership talk about this, and this is important, that we need to understand, articulating it on an ongoing basis, again, is a really, really important part of affecting good change. Okay, and the last one is, and for me, and so, when I talked about forums and be confident. Okay, so when I did it was actually an IAP2 training session, and it was Keith, and he came up and said, hi, buddy, he said, I'm Keith, I'm your trainer. I thought, that's great. And he said, you want to grab my elbow? I've just got a sec. Yeah, grab his elbow. He said, okay, look, sorry, they didn't tell me you were coming, just want to know what needs you have. Are you fine? Do you want to say anything? No problem, anything, just let me know. Yeah, addressed with it up front, just didn't hide it. I can't hide it. Right? Just be confident. Right? And that's what it is. So, what are we going for time?
About 5 minutes.
So 5 minutes. So why don't we have a bit of a chat and ask me all those awkward questions? The people want. Got any questions? Or are you studying me with silence?
Yeah, one of the things we talked about before, Tony, was our first practice discussion, was that fear that we don't know what to do the right thing, particularly people with hidden disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you be a bit more sensitive around that and not just ignore it and hope it will go away?
I think there are two things. I think, again, it's maintaining a bit of dignity for people. So it's about saying, look, is there anything I can do to help you? And if they say no, well, you've done your bit. Honestly, you can't, unless they're going to hurt themselves or somebody else, that becomes a different issue. But under a normal circumstance, what can I do? Is there anything I can do to help and provide you the information in a different way? Would you like to sit at the front? You might notice they've got big hearing aids, or it's obvious that they can't hear, perhaps. You know that getting around a particular table is going to be problematic, you say, look, there's another way to get around to find a seat, or do you want a hand? And it's about asking those questions. Again, be confident and ask. Again, my little so I used to do a lot of travel with work. I'd go 2 or 3 times a month, and my little strategy with Virgin, because they weren't the best customers, they checked for me. The customer service wasn't as good as it could be. I'd walk in there, if I hadn't got a hand in a couple of minutes, because I would just basically head to the counter and slam into it really hard. I guarantee you, I got the best service. Straight to the front. Oh, now look, and if anyone's ever travelled overseas, you know those big lines going through customs? My wife was so embarrassed how we got taken up to the front of the queue. Staring, I'm like, I can't see them. I have come to the conclusion you only get embarrassed if you see people looking. So I told you, the benefits running unending. So yeah, so that answers that question?
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions?
I can hear clapping coming from the other room.
That's good. They're not as good as us, don't worry. So any other quick questions before we finish up? Last one? No, that's okay. That's fine. Excellent. All right.
Thank you. I think we would like to give Tony a round of applause.